So I think we talked about, my suggestion was coming out stories, but in a way that we kind of interview each other,
Sure.
like ask probing questions.
Oh, probing.
Probing.
Alrighty.
So I'm out of breath.
Been jogging?
Okay, so you want me to start? Can I ask a question?
Oh.
Or how do you want to do this?
Oh, what do you have in mind?
All right. So, John, I'm going to go to you.
Oh.
When did you come out? How old were you?
Okay. My story has like these different sections, but when I think about coming out, I think about kind of these phases, because I certainly came out to myself first, and then it's like coming out to, the people that you trust, and then my third phase is kind of coming out publicly. So I'll go right to my public coming out. I was 19. I was 19 when I publicly came out, and I was in college. And it was interesting because there was an incident that happened on our college campus, and I went to a Jesuit college, so Catholic school, but Jesuits, they're pretty liberal and very open-minded, and you can be openly gay, and it really didn't matter. I was very much involved with my church at school. It was fun. I really had a fun experience, and I think that I say that because it helped me be confident in my coming out, because I felt supported. Not only did I have friends that knew that I was gay and supported me, but I felt like I had, interestingly enough, a Catholic school that also kind of held me up.
Sure.
So there was an incident at my school where one of the fraternities, they have these newsletters, right? But they only get circulated within their groups, and whatever is in their newsletters is whatever is in their newsletters. Well, one leaked. It got out into the public, and it happened to have some very derogatory mentions and words, targeting certain groups, like women, African Americans, and I think another group that was kind of targeted with just very derogatory wording. And so there was a big, ruckus on campus. And at the time, I happened to be the president of our Gay and Lesbian Association. And so all this was stirring about, and one of the things that the kind of student body wanted to do was to have this forum in our theater, and invite anyone who wanted to come and just kind of talk this out, and we've got to do something about this, kind of this rally kind of a thing, and get people on board. So I go back to my gay and lesbian group called GALA, Gay and Lesbian Association. And like, this is interesting that's happening on campus, because one group that they did not specifically target are gay and lesbians, right? But should we engage in this forum, or should we just kind of stay back because they didn't mention,
Call us out,
that
right?
they didn't call us out, right? So we decided to be involved. And so being the president, all these different groups around the school got to kind of get up on stage and do their thing. And I got up there, and hello, I'm John Cottrell. I'm the president of the Gay and Lesbian Association.
Jesus.
That was my coming out.
Literally on stage.
Literally on stage.
Wow.
Hundreds of people,
Wow.
a lot of my friends. And
I should call mom and dad.
and I've been so lucky. I just have to say, I've been so lucky in all of my coming out situations. Even this one, my dorm pals, my good friends, especially the ones that didn't know, or just kind of wondered, I guess, they rallied around me.
Wow, that's
They
beautiful.
rallied around me. And good job, John, we're on your side, and thank you for coming out. I mean, just all this stuff. And even that allowed me to, because we had, our formal dances and things like that, I asked a guy to the dance. John, we're around you. If anyone picks on you or anything, we're on your side. And, I was so...
That is beautiful.
Yeah, I was
So nice.
I was so lucky. So lucky.
When did you know you were gay, though? Like, before you spoke it or not? Like, what woke you up to the idea of,
it's one of those things where I knew early on,
Like how early?
like a kid, kindergarten, where of course we have no words for it. But when I think back, I was like, yeah, like there was this kid who I really liked. His name was Paul. And I really liked Paul. But I just saw him as, my best friend. But when I look back, it's like, no, I think I really liked him. Because even in kindergarten, there was this kind of talk about, my girlfriend, my boyfriend,
Right.
even though we didn't know what that meant, even as that young, right? But not that I used those words, but I think I had those feelings. So, yeah, kindergarten. How old are you in kindergarten?
5.
Yeah. Um, and as I got older, in maybe 6, 7, or 8, maybe 8 or 9, I would say, years old, still not really having any true words for it, but certainly having these feelings. And who I was kind of looking at. And I think, gosh, it's hard to kind of rewind that tape because I was so young. But in retrospect, just knowing I didn't have a term for this, just knowing that I was different, and as I matured, I just knew at some point I knew that, well, if I'm this way, I can't tell anybody because
That's tough to grow up.
because it just seemed so different. I don't know if I knew it was wrong. It just seemed so different that, and because I didn't have any words for it, I just better keep it to myself. I was like that for many years, through my adolescence, or early teens. I probably came out to someone in high school. I think I came out to myself in high school. Like, you know what? I'm gay. And Catholic school, and that's what, by then I'm getting all the doctrine about homosexuality and all of that. It's bad, it's wrong, it's sinful, and all of that. So I knew for sure that I couldn't tell anybody.
What year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 1986.
86?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So put that in context. So
Right.
we're talking about the 80s.
Yeah.
And to go that long early on with feeling a sort of way, acknowledging it, it's real to you, but not having the right words or not having the discussions, but then going into school and being given an education on what it is that you are.
Yeah.
And what the Lord thinks of that. And
Right.
and that that's gonna be a tough, without saying it, that's a very tough place to be.
Yeah. And even though I grew up Catholic, it didn't seem like it was like this, you're going to burn in hell kind of preaching about homosexuality. It was just kind of this side note. So it wasn't like some other, experiences I know friends have had with their religious upbringing and what they thought about homosexuality. I don't feel like I had that. It was just kind of this side note, just knowing this is a sin, it's wrong, go repent, kind of a thing. What really got me, and I mentioned this in another episode, where for me it was more about what was portrayed in media.
Yeah.
That back then, 70s and the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, as far as what was depicted on TV, because I watched a lot of TV, it was, the kind of the maniac, homicidal, creepy homosexual, or in these sitcoms, it was the very flamboyant, cross-dressing, that kind of depiction. And then I knew for sure, like, oh no, I can't, if that's
Right.
what,
That's right.
if homosexuality is that, I don't want to be that.
Because
And I
look at
can't
how
be
that's received. Look
Yeah.
at how that's portrayed. Look at how everyone responds to that. You're looking at it and you're like, I can't dip into that.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mhm.
And it's funny that I think it's CNN they have a documentary series on sitcoms, and there's a particular episode that talks about exactly what you're getting at. It's the gay characters, the portrayals of them, starting in the 50s with, with I can't, I'm going to forget everyone's name, but there was I can't remember, but it was a robot. It was a program with a robot, and there was a doctor.
Oh,
he was
yeah.
always he was always
yeah.
the
Lost in Space.
Lost in Space. Thank you. I know that's sacrilege because my partner, he's gonna smack me because that's one of the most crucial shows of his lifetime. But then it's the one that takes place in San Francisco where the gay character is he's on a drafting board. He's an illustrator or something. I know everyone's gonna know the name of this. I'm sorry to bring these up and not have the names, but that one was the one for me that I knew that this character and Designing Women. There was another.
Yes.
The gay character on Designing Women. These were the two that I kind of grew up with, watching and thinking like, I'm gonna get killed if I acknowledge that I'm that.
Mm-hmm.
Like growing up in a rural place like I did. It's It was those TV portrayals that were just very dismal.
Yeah.
And not at all like, oh, come on in, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also this narrative that plays out in media too, that you have to be man enough. And so if the character isn't man enough and there's an accusation or a suggestion that they might be gay, usually the reaction is like horrified or how could you think that about, right?
Yes.
And
right.
so even if there isn't a gay character,
Right.
just the mere
Right.
suggestion that
It's such
you
an insult.
might be less masculine
Yeah.
than and culturally portrayed, then that's somehow an insult.
Yes.
Or specifically with Three's Company, that's also the one where
yeah.
John was pretending to be gay so he could live with the two, and it was Mr. Roper and the continual like, oh, I'm being gay now, and oh, that's the trickster again. That's the common theme that pulling the wool over the eye or whatever. Yeah, there was never. I can't even think of a positive portrayal of a gay character ever.
Well, and that's the issue. Because part of what I heard you say a little bit is, where were the role models? Where were the images? And really, I don't think those images didn't start to come out until the 80s, but it was all attached to the narrative of AIDS.
Yeah.
And so we were the desperate, dying, promiscuous ones.
Right.
And right, so in the absence of any narrative, we only have those stereotypes to grow off of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so why would you want to pick that up and put that on?
Embrace that, yeah. Like, is that the mentorship that I'm getting, and am I going to be seen as that? And so my evolution, really, my growing up was really focused on trying to act a certain way to fit this lane of heterosexuality, I guess. So I would not be mistaken for not masculine or man enough, or thought of as gay, because that would be...
But if you look at how gay activists operated in those days, there's a couple of documentaries about before Stonewall, after Stonewall, they're kind of aged. But one thing that they pointed out was how the strategy was to appear as straight as possible. Mm-hmm. And so lesbians were expected to show up at rallies in skirts and look part Relief Society.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to look a little bit more dignified. But the idea was try to be as straight.
Right. Show them that we're just like them.
Yeah.
In our pride parade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And versus let's let the freak fly. No.
Right. Well, you're right. Yes. And we've talked about, just being ourselves and what makes us so unique and special as a people. Having that portrayal squashes that, right? Like, well, if you want to, live, you need to blend in. So look straight and blend in. I mean, that's squashing that uniqueness, that magic, that power that we possess. And it doesn't allow for that to really flourish if we're pretending to be something that we're not.
Yeah. It's funny. I've known you all these years. I've never heard your coming out story.
I think it's such a great story. I mean, I know there was struggle, but I also, it's typical that the stories are always so pained, and it's nice to hear one that maybe isn't as pained. At least that's what I'm hearing. Like I very much liked hearing that you felt supported. Maybe it wasn't necessarily the Catholic Church, but you were in a school. You were supported. You could rise to the occasion of being the president of that organization. You stood on stage and told those people you were gay. Like I think that's such a triumph, and it's such a refreshing thing to hear something like that in someone's coming out story.
Yeah, thank you. And I think even though there was this lane that I walked on, this path that I walked on trying to hide and suppress, who I really am. The flip side is that, just as we talked about kind of that council of ancestors, I don't know if I certainly didn't understand or didn't know of that back then, but I had a real life council, meaning
For sure.
Friends
Yeah.
who supported me and loved me for who I was.
Yeah.
Parents who loved me and supported me for who I was. Going, schools and things like that. So I had all of this around me, almost as if they were just waiting for me to, John, it's okay.
Wow.
John, it's really okay.
Yeah.
We've got you. We've got you. You don't have to live in this pain. You don't have to live in this secrecy and this suppression. Like, that's what my real society was telling me. My real social circle was telling me. When I look back on it, I was like, yeah, I was lucky. I was lucky.
Well, I think it's not just luck, it's who you were as a person always. And I think it's you had these wonderful people around you, but they wanted to be around you because you were a wonderful person too. And I definitely hear what you're saying. It's something when I think about my coming out, I often say to myself, if just one person would have said to me, you're gonna be okay. And I've said this to you before. I've said that, what's happened later in life is that family members have come forward and said, oh, well, we've always known. And your comment was, and they wanted it to just go away. And that's absolutely right. Like, an aunt now coming to me and saying this, I mean, I'm getting better at dealing with it now, but it infuriates me because had I just had just one person say, look, I get it, I understand, I know, and you're going to be fine, you're going to be okay. And it just never came. It just never, ever came. And it was for so long, I was in a place of anger of it. But, I think I'm in a better place of processing now, but yeah, that I don't know. I can't explain it, but hearing your story and hearing you explain it that way, it lifts me up. It just makes me feel happy to hear that you had those arms around you. It's just so wonderful. That's how it should be. That's how coming out should be.
Yeah.
You should feel encouraged and supported to come out to your friends and family.
Yeah.
I will tell you in my work, there is definitely a shift in society in terms of coming out gay or lesbian. Now, the transgender thing, when I deal with parents who are dealing with their kids who are transgender who are coming out, it feels like the 90s again. But now, I hear from LDS families all the time who was just like, what do we do? Like, how do we handle this? Like, at least they're making the phone calls.
And if I can, so to add to your list of the process of coming out, of coming out to yourself, of coming out to others. And then there's also, just like you're describing, there's this period of the others, your family particularly, that they have to come out.
They have to come out too.
They have to they need
It's a process,
time to get to a place so that they can join you in that place where you are.
Yeah.
Because everything up until that moment when you just told them, their programming and their experience has taught them, just like all the TV shows and everything, that it's a plague. Like, why would anyone choose that? Why would you want to be? We've seen for decades now how these people have been portrayed on movie screens and TV screens, and why would you want that? So they, that and among other reasons, they too need time to come out.
Yeah, for sure.
I think straight men envy us deep down. I've heard this a few times because people will see like the gay guys that show up for lodge and stuff like that. There's like a camaraderie and there's a comfort, like gay guys hug.
Yeah.
We just very naturally we're okay with the whole hugging thing. And at one time, there was a bunch of gay guys at the lodge and everyone's hugging, and one of the straight guys was standing there and like nobody was like hugging them, and they're like, well, where's my hug?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
And we had this conversation. He goes, sometimes I get jealous about this camaraderie that seems to happen with your guys, right? Like, and I think the story of masculinity has just kind of screwed up that narrative so much for people.
Yeah. Oh, for
that the idea that I could love you as a gay guy or love you as another straight guy, that somehow compromises my status as heterosexual
Being a
or
strong
masculine.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But and how those narratives, right? Those same narratives are the ones that we felt trapped in when we were kids.
Exactly.
How did mom and dad do with you coming out?
This is an interesting story. I'll quickly go through it, but when I decided to come out to my parents, you know, I come out to myself, I come out to a few people, and I was a member of the Gay and Lesbian Association. I wasn't president then, but I was a member. And I just felt, you know, like, I gotta tell my parents. So I remember I was gonna go home for Christmas break. And just the type of person that I am, I had it all, you know, I knew exactly how it was going to
Here's
go.
my PowerPoint.
Well, in a way, I wrote a script. I wrote it all out. I knew what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I knew exactly how my mom was going to react.
Yeah.
I knew exactly how my dad was going to react. And so I had my script, and I knew what I was going to say. And the day and the time, it was so, you know, boxed in, right? And so went home for Christmas. It was a day I got, you know, Mom and Dad, I have something to tell you. I sat them down. And I told them, right? And I had to rip up the script because the way that my mother reacted was not how I wrote it. I thought that my mother would just fall apart because I felt that I was much closer to my dad and I could just kind of tell my dad anything. And I thought he would be more embracing, and it was the opposite. My mother was more embracing, and my father kind of did the shutdown, which really baffled me because it's like, well, that's not who you are. That's not part of the script. That's not who you are. So there was this time, this, you know, a few years really, of just like that process you're talking about. Like, well, they had to get used to this new thing that their son is telling them. So they had a whole coming out process. Because they had their own agenda or just, you know, script really of what our son is, who he is and what he's going to do and grow up and all that. But I have to say, it only took a few years where everyone came around, my dad included. But I did find, because my mom was the disciplinarian, that's why I thought my mom would just, you know, kind of fall apart. But she turned more nurturing in me coming out to them, and that's kind of carried on to this very day.
Can you, I'm just, if you feel comfortable answering it, do you know what your father was conflicted with? What it was his concern?
We've never talked about it. My guess is just having an image of what my son is supposed to be or going to do. You know, like carry my legacy or, you know, get married, have children, that kind of thing. Even though it was never spoken, that was just the idea. And maybe, I don't know for sure, maybe seeing me less as a man. I don't know. That's just a guess.
But if I may, bottom line, it didn't fit his script.
It didn't fit his script.
Like you went with yours and it just, the script changed a bit.
Yeah. But as they saw me just be me and kind of do the things that I love to do, and was doing well with them, I guess, you know, like, well, John is John. And we love this kid.
Did they incorporate like your partner and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah. It, you know, it was, when I, would bring, when I brought Jeff home, like for Christmas, this was certainly much years later, they accepted him. And, but part of it was also kind of an unspoken thing. I will say this, because when I first came out, you know, one of the things that my mother said was, I'm glad you told us, but don't tell anybody else. So it just became this ongoing secret, really. And so I didn't really fully come out, as far as a family coming out kind of thing.
Respecting their wishes.
Because I wanted to respect their wishes, and so I didn't tell anybody in the family. So they knew, but no one else knew.
Like your brothers?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But they eventually
figured
it out, and it was no big deal.
They saw the videos. The Alice videos. We don't have a sister.
And then other people just kind of figured it out. And, family members and close friends of the family and that kind of thing. But I think, from my perspective, they just still saw me as John.
And, and that's also something that I know I've talked with people, with John, with my partner, but with others about coming out and the way to do it. And I know it was always suggested to me that, you're going to have this conversation, you're going to tell them that you're coming out, and you're going to also end it with, and I'm the exact same person I was just before I told you this. And that's what they have to get to. That's what they took 2 years to get to. That's what your father had to just kind of take time and just observe you and make sure you were going to be okay. And in fact, you're the same person that you were before you told him, and then he got comfortable with it again. And maybe that's the coming out process for them, is to realize that, I
really are the same person.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
It is, you're thinking more about my sex than I am type of thing. Like, it's not this dark freakish thing unless you want it to be, and it's consensual. No, I'm kidding, but it's but they need to have that moment where they realize that you're the same son they've always loved, and it just takes time for them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I have to circle back and say one thing, because it just came to me and started to make me cry a little bit, but there was one person in my life that said that it was going to be okay, and it was my mom. And it's hard because it's I think I was 14, and Geraldo Rivera, fucking talk shows, Geraldo was on, and it was definitely a ball session of people coming out, and it was then that my mother turned to me and said that, if that's you, it's going to be okay. And I was so, I'm sitting there watching this show, and of course I was connecting with it, but at the same time I was deeply ashamed and knew I had to hide it all and whatever. And so it was I just wasn't ready to accept that. I wonder what things would have been like. Maybe I would imagine much different, but I don't know. I can't not give her that. I have to give her that. I was incredibly close to my mother, and I appreciate her so much. And so I have to go on record and make it clear that I remember that she was the one person that said that to me, that it's going to be okay. I just wasn't in a place to accept it yet.
And just to clarify, had you come out to her?
No.
You were both watching this program.
The show was on, and the kid was bawling because he was coming out to their parent, and this was still, I don't know, it was still so controversial that it was a Geraldo Rivera episode.
Right.
I had such a crush on the younger version of him.
Yeah. He's gone to some pretty weird places now, I gotta say.
No more.
Yeah, but I hear you. There was a sexiness. Yeah, there was a spicy sexiness to it. But, yeah, it was just that time I wasn't ready. I was still very much pretending to be straight. That's just what I thought I had to do. And so I couldn't take that medicine that I definitely was resentful for a decade or more that I never was given it by anyone. And, she did. She did give me that then, but I just wasn't ready for it.
Can you remember that moment, just your initial reaction to her saying that?
I think I was crying a little bit, and I think I was shaking my head and said, no, that's not me, or, I remember saying no. I remember dismissing it and trying to assure her that I wasn't going to be that.
Mothers know.
Yeah.
Yeah, mothers know.
Yeah.
Can you, I mean, if you kind of went down that path of just after that moment, was there any thought like, oh, now she knows? Or was there anything like, what did you do? What happened?
I think I lived up until that point so long with knowing that I was gay and knowing that I had to hide it and knowing that there was I could be faggot. I could be called out on it if I behaved, in ways or whatever that wasn't straight enough. And so all I remember of that, I know it's in the house we're in now. So I know I was 14 because she bought it then. So I know I can visually see it all. I know the sun was coming. I remember just a lot of details like that about it. But I remember just going into a mode that was familiar in that just going back to the hiding mode and not I didn't really, I don't know, it wasn't so much that I was concerned specifically that she was going to get it from that, that she was going to suspect from that moment. It was just more that I knew I had to just go back into the hide mode that I thought I was being so successful at, in keeping it all away. And even though she gave me that opportunity, I just knew that I couldn't take that. Being in the rural place where I was still finishing high school and having a father that said the things he did to me, like I just knew that even though she was saying it, that I couldn't change anything for me then.
Yeah. Who was the first person that you told?
That was a roommate in that was a roommate in college at BU at Boston University. I had a girlfriend at the time. He was my roommate. He moved in and ended up being my roommate. And 2 girls and 2 guys, and we were kind of all friendly. And that my girlfriend was at the time was part of that group. And so he knew about her. School went out of session, and we stayed and rented an apartment, he and I, for the summer. And he found the Bay Windows newspaper in my gym bag. And Bay Windows is the gay South End at the time, in Boston where I was living. That was the local gay newspaper. And he found it, and he asked me if I was gay. And I said yes, and then a few minutes later he came out to me that he was gay.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny because the collective of friends, because at BU was in Warren Towers for my first year, and I was on a co-ed floor, and it was nuts. But that's where I met my girlfriend, who was amazing, and I met a lot of friends. We had a really good group, but we always kind of knew that my roommate, we're kind of, all right, sister, we see you. Like, we suspected. It was easy. It wasn't a shock when he came out. But yeah, it was him. And then that was a good summer. And that was, I can't remember if I've shared this one or not, but that was the summer. No, I was just telling my cousin. So that was the summer. So he and I rented this apartment on Beacon Street. And every morning we would get up and we would jog down Beacon Street, and we would stop at this insanely gorgeous brownstone. And we always thought, wow, what would it be like, to live in a place like this? And that was our morning run route. And then, fast forward to coming out to each other. And then he must have, I'm sure he was on, at the time it was Manhunt, I'm sure. And ended up hooking up with the guy that owned the penthouse in that building. I mean, it was insane. There was a library, there's a grand piano. It was the most insane place. So we get invited to this party, and that's where I met John, my partner. Wow. And that's where I met Paul, one of my best friends. I met them both at the same time. And it was, I was 19, and we've essentially been together ever since. So it was it was amazing. It was a very amazing thing. I love the story of how that happened. And then it was later, for me, coming out beyond that, it was 10 more years until I would with my parents. But it was absolutely with the support of John, my partner, who said, you're going to call them, you're going to call your mom right now, and you're going to tell her. And I did, and I called her, and I said, Mom, I'm dating a guy. And she didn't miss a beat. She's like, well, what's his name? Like, it was nothing. It was great. And he really helped support me in that process. And then came out to my father a little bit later. It was weird. I was in a situation of God, it's weird how it happened because I didn't come out. He asked me if I was gay, and I was in a predicament, in a situation that I'm not going to go into detail in, but it was troubling, and I was calling for him for help. I needed some help, some financial help with something, and it was from that being in that place of stress and asking for help financially that my father decided that he needed to ask me if I was gay. And I'll never forget the tone, and I'll never forget the way he said it to me. And are you gay? Are you gay? Like, it was just the inflection and everything. It just, and yeah, I said, I am. And, I was in my apartment at the time with my partner. And so, yeah, I am. And, he was like, okay, that's okay. That's okay. And I don't remember much what he said after that. It wasn't anything inspirational or uplifting, but that started that process. But without a doubt, I think about it a lot. I did have a boyfriend, a little bit in between after meeting my current partner John, and then when we finally got back together. So I had this boyfriend, and we were at Harvard. He was there in school, and he had a horrible relationship with his parents, and he taught me that. He taught me how to really put them in a place and push them away because they're just gonna not be accepting. And so it made that training or that programming was bad for me. It definitely helped, or it made me push them away for a period of time that I probably didn't need to. I certainly didn't need to. I didn't need to, but I did it because I had seen this example of this person that was very bitter, and understandably, because he did go, it was horrible what he went through, and so that kind of just taught me that that's what I was gonna be. And I'm so grateful that I'm not with that person, and that I'm with who I am now, because my parents both just, my mother's passed, but my father and my stepmother are still here, and they adore John. And it's, my dad is referring to us as his two sons, and it's definitely, they've definitely come out. It took them some time. There were some fumbles along the way, but we're in a good place, very good place now. And when you're explaining that story to me about being young and in school and being supportive and being active in the group, the gala group, it's that feel. I can feel that when you say it, and that's what I feel now. I feel, because my parents know, and they both love me, and they love my relationship and my partner. And so that, I got to that eventually. Yes, I would have loved to have felt that way in high school. I think, I don't know, I don't try to spend a lot of time doing this, but I'm a very athletic person, and I just am so resentful that I didn't play more sports. I could have lettered in everything. I could have done it, and I get angry sometimes at that. Like, I feel like the high school, when I play it back in my mind, it's just not what I am now, and I just wish that I could have been more like that then. But maybe that just, obviously that just wasn't my path, and I may be better at understanding others that have gone through something like that, and maybe I'm better to be not likely to go the path of my ex-boyfriend of just pushing everyone away, right. But instead I could, maybe help be supportive for others that are going through this process, in a more positive way, in a way that, that supports them, I guess.
Well, that's my question for you now. You talked about you wish you had someone that would have just said, it's okay, Have you been that person for someone else?
Gosh, I don't know that I have yet. I going out east and meeting gays there, and making my gay family, everything's gay. We lived in the South End. It was the gayest place at the time. I don't know. I didn't have the opportunity to do that because what I encountered was just a lot of young gays that maybe were having that conflict, but were seemingly fine. Like, we were all together. We had our community. We were away from that bullshit, and we were in a very, very liberal state, as Massachusetts is, and we pretty soon could get married, and you know, all of these things just started happening, and yeah, I would love to be that for someone. I would. It's hard for me because I feel like those are the people that are in rural places that time, you know, the change doesn't come as quick to those places for marriage equality or things like I'm describing in Massachusetts, you know, by any sense, and so, you know, it's hard for me because that's definitely where I was in a very rural, stuck in that type of programming place, and I think that, you know, now, given how people are coming out and given how where everything's at, I guess what I'm getting at is I want that opportunity to be that voice for someone. I don't know where they are. I think that they're probably in rural places, and it's even just this past weekend I went down to the rural places to do candy making with my aunts, and it's really tough on me. Like, it's not just that my mom is gone and that's something we always did together, but it's going back to those places, those dirt roads, and just it just brings it all back to me. And you're right. I'm sorry. I'm answering questions for you that you're asking that you haven't even asked yet. But you're right. You're right. I need to be stronger going into places like that because there definitely are people like me there back when I was. And if I could just be less like, I hate being here, I could maybe be a voice for someone. I don't know. It's weird. I don't have really close connections with my family. I have 3 wings of them. I don't know if there's anyone that's young and gay. I think I might have a lesbian second cousin, but I don't have much contact with them. But I don't know. I do want to be that voice. I don't know where. Maybe they're out there. Maybe they're watching.
They're going to come to the retreats.
I hope you do, because I would like to be your voice of support. But yeah, that's a good question, John. That one really took me places. Thanks.
Can I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because I grew up rural Michigan. What, you grew up in Oakland?
Oakland,
yeah. And many, sometimes I feel like most of Utah is rural, right? I'm having 2 thoughts. One is, I think it's interesting that how do I show up and be stronger when your strength might be how do I show up and allow myself to be vulnerable?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do I allow myself to step back into that place with the vulnerability of recognizing that it is symbolic of my past, but not letting it consume me, and being real with what happens. I know when we go back to where Bruce is from, I wouldn't describe it as traumatic, but I do know that there's a certain sensibility of, okay, you got to play it smart here, right?
Yeah.
Like in Salt Lake City, I can hold your hand, give you a hug and love, but I may not be able to do that in rural towns.
Right.
Yeah.
That definitely every time for me. John and I are apart. We won't. Yeah.
Then the other piece I'm wondering as I'm listening, I'm just thinking, the place of healing, the trauma of those places for us growing up, like, what is that healing process? Like, I think a lot of times people, myself, others, like, we get stuck in a particular place. These areas represent that trauma. What is the role of healing? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, the thing that I always jump to, and I think it is a little naive because I don't, I had this so early on, my last year of high school, I only had to take a couple classes to graduate. I ended up going to an extension campus in Park City, UVSC, and I took a lot of psychology classes. That's all I took. And Psych 101. And I remember my professor at the time saying, there are people that are going to go into psychology because they want to try to fix themselves, and then there are people that are going into psychology because they want to try to help others, and you can't help others. You can't. She explained it to me in a way that you won't be healing yourself if you haven't been healed before you go into the process of helping to heal others. And so what I was about to say is, what's the process look like? Well, I'm going to say it means we need to have community and we need to help people and we need to have conversations, but that's not fixing it in me. I don't think I still have it. I just experienced it last weekend. It's still that yeah, we got to we got to hide. We can't be seen as this here. But I do feel strongly, I have supported a lot of younger gays and I feel good about doing that, but yeah, that's not healing me, I guess.
Well, yeah, I struggle with the paradigm of healing. I guess I'm just asking, what's the process? I mean, I think it's a process for everyone, right? But what is the process of, like, I hear a lot of wounding from people. Like, this is what happened to me when I was 12 and when I was 13, and this was the community, and this was the church, and this was, right? And sometimes we get so locked into stuff that happened 20 years ago. And my question is, at what point do we kind of employ this magic, if you will, that allows us, instead of that being a source of wounding, how about if it becomes a source of resiliency, a source of empowerment, a source of overcomingness, whatever you want to call that? Mm-hmm. Like, how do we reshape that experience of trauma to the place that it emboldens us to step into a more powerful place?
Yeah, it imbues you with this. Yeah.
Like, I think about where I grew up,
yeah,
and where I am today, and I go home, and I kind of do it in this really contemplative, like, I grew up on a lake, and I'll sit and I think, how would my life been different if I had stayed here? And yeah, a lot of terrible things happened here, but I look at who I am today, and I think those were kind of some stepping stones to get to where I'm at today, and I love where I'm at today.
It's hard, Jerry. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard to take that pain that I'm so resentful for. And I know what you're talking about. I know in session I get it. It's what we all, it's like this badge, this rite of passage, this badge of non-honor that we all have of look what they did to me. Look what they did to me when I was this age. This is what I went through. And I know, I recently with a friend that it's a long story, but this friend that was very close that had a very, very, very horrible upbringing and parents that his father tried to kill him when he came out. Like, it was just an awful, awful traumatic experience. And it has created this pain that he wears. And unfortunately, and it's been years. I've brought him around to my family. We've gone to family reunions, stuff like that. But the demons still kept biting at him. And it got to the point where his demons biting at him started biting at me, and I couldn't endure it anymore. I couldn't give him the home anymore that we were giving him. And so it ended. And it's very sad that it went that way, but it what I play in my mind, and it's so hard to do. I mean, I get what you're saying is it's a source of empowerment. It imbues us with this purpose. But I also feel like you're the only one holding on to it. And it's hurting you so much that let go of it. But God, I mean, if it were only that easy, I understand. But like, to a degree, you're the only, you're still playing the narratives, and you had these people don't even remember you. They didn't know that they did it to you, and when you die, they're not going to remember any of it. And it's like, why spend this finite time we have living together, just carrying that bag of pissed offness all over the place, like it's what they did to me, and I know we can recognize that. Oh, you've got one too. Okay, let me see if I can help you with yours, but. I don't know. I'm not letting go of it. I'm still dragging it around with me, and I don't know if it's helping me help others the way that it should. I don't know if I can just get to a place of forgetting it, but is that what I'm supposed to do?
I don't know if we're supposed to forget it, because I think it can act as a source for empowerment. Some of the things that I do in some of my yoga therapy work and just other therapy work and talking to folks with similar kinds of stories is helping them perhaps kind of shift that paradigm, change the story, or reframe it in a way where it's just a little bit more palatable. Like, does it have to be, because you can't change the situation as far as maybe something happened to you, a traumatic experience happened to you, but is there a way to look at it, or even just a nugget of it, a piece of it that has a sense of empowerment, or here's a vague example. Traumatic experience, it's devastating, yet you survived. You got through it. You're here now. Something like that, something that a person can latch on to that can give them just a glimmer of hope and start to then reframe that circumstance, that thing that they lived through, because they certainly lived through it and got to the other side, and then start to pick out, well, what made you strong in that moment, and what made you more open to people, or open to yourself, or start picking it apart and start retelling the story.
Yeah, going through it. I can see that, John. That's a good idea. That you're re-editing. It's you're playing the video in your mind again. You're adding on at the end, but I survived, which is something to definitely consider. I'm here now, and I can see I don't know. It's just hard. I thought what you were going to say is that I have to get to a place of forgiveness. Like, I have to forgive. I have to forgive the individual or the entities or the things, and I have to understand why they were ignorant and they did these things and they don't know any better. And it's hard. It's hard to to re-change the video in my mind and add that that voiceover. It's hard to add that to it, but I you're right, but I survived, and I'm here now, and I want, I can see that it's difficult work, but it's work.
Do you know, there's a book written by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, yeah.
And the premise behind his book is here's a man who went through, I don't know if he went through the Jewish concentration camps, but he looked at people who went through the concentration camps, and there was like two camps of people. There were people who, despite the diversity of the situation, they were of goodwill to each other, they helped each other out, and when they got out of the concentration camps, they kind of were able to get their lives back together fairly quickly. And then there was another camp of people who were kind of, awful experiences, who didn't kind of treat each other very well in the concentration camps, who were kind of bitter and angry about the situation. And then when they came out, they just carried that trauma with them, and their lives never recovered. And Frankl, his question was, what was the difference between the two camps? And what he found was that those who had survived their traumatic life experience and losses, that they had some broader context that they could put it in. This is the plight of our people, and we're, whatever, I'm making this up, but they had some grand purpose, some design was attached to the suffering, and that those who were stuck in the trauma could not attach any meaning to it. And I've always said this, I think one of the profound gifts of being gay is, because of the lack of privilege, we have to examine who we are. We have to be contemplative about the sense of identity. And in many cases, we have to be very deliberate about how that's going to look for us. And we dare to challenge norms by loving each other and connecting in ways that are not conventional.
Right.
I don't think our heterosexual counterparts have that same challenge
Yeah.
No, you're right.
or opportunity,
Mhm.
and tend to kind of follow this pre-prescribed idea through their religion or culture or tradition. I mean, how many people get married in the church? My brother's an atheist, got married in the church. Why? Because that's just what you do,
That's what you
Yeah.
do.
right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
we create commitment ceremonies, and we throw daisies at each other, and we create our own thing, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the gifts of being gay or queer in general, is
Right.
that we can go to that place of finding our own profound meaning. Why am I here? What is this gift, this bounty that's been put on me
Mhm.
that others may not understand?
Right. Right.
And I think in that quest, right, is that place, because this might sound a little conceited, but sometimes when I go home or when I'm around people that I grew up with, there's a part of me that feels a little sorry for them.
Sure.
Like, you didn't get to go through this. You didn't get to question at these critical junctures of your life who you are and who you love and how you do life. And I can stand here, and whether you accept me or not is not even relevant.
Right.
I've done that work.
Mhm.
And I might feel a little sorry for them.
Yeah.
I think I wish everyone could have a gay year so they could go through it. Like Tom Selleck, please. I'd coach him. But do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to accept it, but it's tough. I've never thought about it that way. It is a shift in perspective, no doubt.
Well, and Nick, you said something else too that I think is the reason why we're sitting here. Is where exactly in the gay bars do they have these conversations
No
set
shit.
up?
Yeah.
Or on Manhunt or Grinder?
Right.
Like,
Right.
where are these
When do you get
conversations
into that?
happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is this happening? When do you
E-
have these opportunities?
Even the idea that one has to go to therapy would suggest that my existence
That's
is
exactly right.
pathologized
God, that's exactly right.
and has to be examined.
That's exactly right.
And what I think what we're doing,
Yeah.
and the retreats in particular, is not only are we going to look at it, we're going to have fun with
We're
it.
gonna have
We're
fun.
going to celebrate it.
Yeah.
We're going to find ways of making it bigger and beautiful and bolder.
And
Yeah.
embrace it and support each
Yeah,
other.
and maybe we should have a coming out party at the next retreat.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's what
We'll
I
get a
love.
cake.
Yeah, that's what I love about us. This particular group. That's what I like about kind of the greater culture of queerness, gayness, etc. Is that we have this opportunity, this wonderful, unique opportunity to tell our own story, and to celebrate in it, and to create and shape things in the way that we want them to look like. Just as, we don't, we can get married now, yes. We don't have to get married in a church. We don't have to, have a priest or whatever do the thing. We can get married naked in the ocean and have this union with the fishes, or you can do whatever you want. And I love the idea of having like a coming out party.
Yeah.
Because this that we're doing, yes, I would consider work, but I don't want people to think that, oh, it's hard, it's tough. It is. But to have that drudgery, like, oh, I got to go to therapy and I got to talk to my priest or my, whatever to get through this, why not make it more of a social norm for queer folks, that we get together and we're going to play games, talk, socialize, celebrate what we do.
I'm having Jesus is talking to me right now.
Okay.
So
All right.
got it.
What did she say?
Girl, you are so right. No, in a lot of tribes and traditions, there are maturation ritual and ceremony.
Yeah, there you go.
So when I am stepping, like in Africa, ibogaine is this plant medicine, but it's used by the people during this time when a young man goes from being a boy to stepping into his manhood and warriorship.
Yeah.
Yoruba and the Santorian traditions, when a young woman is coming into maturation, there is ritual and ceremony and
Exactly.
surrounded by the grandmothers and the mothers to celebrate this time of transition. So imagine this. We're at the retreat. We build this threshold.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we have all this amazing party decor around.
Yeah.
And we bring each person through the gate.
Yes.
And we just joyously celebrate, right? Nick is this gay guy who is stepping into his gayness, and boom, there he is. And then John, like we can all kind of come through the tunnel, the makeshift vagina, if you will, and boom, be born into our grimace.
Reborn.
That is so critical, so crucial. You're hitting a very important thing in many cultures, especially American culture. There's no ritual. There's no rites of passage.
Yep.
For these things in our
Baptism.
lives.
No, but that's exactly what I was thinking about. When you're talking about that, and you're talking about the tribes and the way they do this, I'm thinking, well, Jesus, I got baptized when I was 8. Like, that's all I can think about in terms of ritual of being acknowledged as a growing being in this world, and that didn't do so much for me. But
think about how edgy this would be. We can cut all this out if we need to, but think about how edgy it would be. Like, for me, I love the male body. I love it. I love it artistically. If you look through the house, you will find artistic expressions of male nudity in a very artistic kind of a way. I love it pornographically. I love it artistically at our workshops. To me, I kept thinking, what a beautiful scene this is of men just in their bodies, all different shapes and colors and designs. Like, it's a very beautiful thing. And how, other than your picture looks really hot, right, or a flaming emoji, right, and that's even kind of fun too. Like, I don't know, we so critical of Grindr and Scruff. That's kind of fun.
yeah,
right?
it's serving a purpose.
Yeah.
But we create. There's all these layers of shame, and what if we just let us celebrate this love and appreciation of one of the essences of what makes us gay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having a coming out party is, like I said, I was lucky enough to have a very positive experience in my various coming out experiences. Not everyone's story is like mine. And so if we had an opportunity for people to have the coming out that they wanted to have.
No, I want to be on stage in front of 300 people. I want to be I remember running a group at I want that type of coming out, definitely. But I mean, I can get that from the threshold. And
and to be cheered.
We'll find you a stage.
You come out and you're cheered and celebrated and cake and
Right. You could come through. There could be a pole, and you have to do a pole dance. No.
Definitely.
All the things. That's what a coming out can be.
Yeah.
For someone.
Yeah, you're right. I mean that in looking now, considering me dragging my bag of pissed offness around and resentment and whatever, and where it's holding me, as opposed to just bye, and then just going through a new a new celebration, a new entrance, really, and I love that idea. I think that's very
It's in a whole different context.
And I just think the reality is, any life circumstances, nobody else is going to get it right. If we're looking for that stage to ever be perfect for us, it never will be.
Yeah.
And at some point, I mean, this is something you and I keep bouncing back and forth, and I'm in my work around it, right? It's like, the story I'm telling myself is the problem. It's the cancer. And what happens when I adjust that, right? And where does that take me? It's true of whatever the situation is. If I'm blaming someone for the situation, I gotta look back and say, okay, how have I colluded in it? How have I colluded in the homophobia around me?
Sure.
How have I colluded in the judgments that I'm not man enough or pretty enough or whatever?
Right. How have I contributed?
It's
Go ahead.
no, it's just again, I want to go there. I do, but I still find myself wanting to hold on to that bag of anger so much.
I'm gonna do a few more laps.
Yeah. We'll burn it out of you then. But so I
Make that flame blue.
yeah,
Pedal a little louder. Sing a little louder.
Exactly. But I again, I mean, I've never considered these things, these ideas, and I love that we do this, that we talk about these things, because it does give me other, it gives me other places to go mentally when I'm starting to play the video over again and over again. Yeah. And it's just, it is, that is, I haven't been to a retreat yet. I'm looking forward to it, but that is what I feel that a retreat will be, is that opportunity to shift narrative, but to be supported by other people that want to help you with doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that again, that's not something we're gonna get in a bar. It's not something we're gonna get in a grinder exchange. But if we could just come together as men and look each other in the eyes and listen to the stories and understand them, then that really can be it.
Just for sake of disclosure, when I talk to people on Grindr, we have these conversations.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure.
I mean, I do too. I mean, I'm on Scruff, and I get into these conversations, and usually these guys are like,
who are you?
Who are you?
What app are we on right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've never met anyone like you on.
For sure. For sure.
I'm having, because I'm typing in complete sentences and
right.
tell me more about that.
Right, exactly. Right.
The
dick pics are great, but what about yeah.
But how do you really feel?
Yeah. And I think I'm doing that on purpose, and that's because I want to connect. And I think that's so. I mean, why we're doing this podcast, why the three of us are getting together, and sharing this with the world, so that you don't have to just be in your head all the time and just wrapped up in your own story. That there are people, there's a person that you probably can sit down and talk with and just shoot the shit, and without any agenda really, and really gain a lot of insight. I mean, even just talking about this and, the coming out party, that just kind of came up.
Yeah.
Right? Just spontaneously,
but,
right?
But through it, I'm getting permission to think about these things. I've never gone down these roads of thinking when I'm pissed off and I'm dragging the bag around that there are other ways. There are really other ways to look at this that could be a lot more positive. And I've never given myself the permission to do that because I think the struggle. It's just got to be like that, and it's.
Okay, you have permission.
Permission granted.
You got permission, and you've got permission too. Have your own coming out party, or think about how have you come out, or have you come out, and who can you talk to? Who are the people that you can trust? Do you have family? Do you have friends? Think about retreats like the ones that we're doing. Finding these opportunities to just be and then to celebrate who you are. I think that could be a wonderful coming out. So if you've got some comments or some questions that you want to share with us, please just find our email address at the bottom of the screen or in our show notes and get to us. We'll get back to you, and we'll just keep giving you content like this if you like it. Hopefully you do. And we just want to celebrate who we are, and we want to celebrate who you are. So thanks again for joining us on Mindfully Gay. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.